Welcome to AER Int channel and welcome back to comprehensive course. So in this lecture we are going to discuss about two more basic shapes, and they are basically circles and rectangles. So in SolidWorks basically there are many ways to create circles as well as rectangles. So we are going to see all of them. So I'm going to start my SolidWorks and I'm already in the sketch with the MMGSS my unit. And it is basically obvious that we will find the circle and rectangle in the shape section. And we will see that these are the types of rectangles and these are the types of circles. So ultimately they will going to create the circle, but the approach are different. Now over here we can see that this is the common circle. So to create a circle we require two things basically. The first one is the center point and the radius value or a circumferential point. If we have these two things, we can easily able to create the circle. So now let's just see. So the first circle is known as the simple circle. Just click on that and then it will going to ask you for the center point. Click on anywhere and that will be taken as the center point. And accordingly, just expand our mouse and accordingly it will going to create the circle. But don't expand or nothing, we just have to drag our mouse and accordingly it will going to be expanded. Click on that and it will going to create the circle accordingly. Now, two dimensions the circle. It's very easy. We just have to click on the smart dimension and then we just have to click on the circle. And automatically it will going to provide that diameter value. Click on anywhere and the modification dialog box will going to open. From here, we just have to provide the desired diameter value. And accordingly it will going to create the diameter. There are other ways as well. Let's say that these are other basically circumstances as well. Let's say that these are two lines and we want to have the circle that we are going to start taking this endpoint of the line as a center, and that's to touch out its circumference to touch out or touch out this endpoint. So at that time we don't have to do much more thing, we just have to go for the simple circle. Click on this the endpoint and it will going to take the endpoint as the center of the circle. Expand it or drag our mouse and just hover and just grab this endpoint. We can see that accordingly its radius or diameter will going to be adjusted. So it's not necessary that all the time we have the diameter radius value. Sometimes we have to take the references and at that time we can use these kinds of methods. Like let's say one more example, like from this endpoint to this endpoint, I can just create a circle accordingly. Now this is a type of circle, or this is an approach of circle in which we want to have or we should have the center point. Let's say that basically we want to create a circle but we can't find out its center point. Let me just give you one example for that. Let's say that these are the three lines over here and these are the three lines basically, and we want to create a circle whose circumference should touch these all three endpoints like this. So it's touching over here. Let's say like this. So at that time, let's just go for the conventional circle that we have seen so far. So here, since it required the center point, so we have to adjust some center point. And then we have to just, as we know that how just to touch it, but it will not going to touch these 2 points because all the lines are not basically the same. So to solve this kind of problem, there are basically we can use mathematical methods and there are some other approaches as well. But let's say that here we have to adjust the center point, or the point is that we don't know about the center point. So at that time, we can use this circle, which is the second circle, which is known as the perimeter circle. So here, just click on that and instead of asking us for the points, it will going to ask you what the center point. It will going to ask you 3 circumferential points. So this I'm going to take as a 1 point, this as my second point, and this as my third point. And we can see that accordingly it will going to adjust its center point. Similarly, I can just create it from these 3 points as well. Like this, and accordingly it will going to find out the center point. So in the cases where we don't have the center point, we can use this circle for that. The next comes the rectangle. So for the rectangle, we have these many kinds of rectangles. So the first one is known as the corner rectangle. If we have the 2 points, which is the lower left corner and upper right corner, if we have these 2 points, we can easily able to create a rectangle accordingly. So the first approach is same over here. We require the 2 corner points. Click on that and it will going to ask you for the first corner point. Then the second corner point, and accordingly it will going to create that rectangle. And these kinds of rectangle are important in these cases. Let's say that there are 2 lines over here, and we want to create a rectangle between these 2 points. We can just select a corner rectangle, select this and this point, and accordingly it will going to create that rectangle. The next is the center rectangle. So here we require the center point first, and then accordingly we can just create a rectangle like this. And these are basically the reference lines. We can adjust these ones in both cases, like in the corner rectangle. Also we will find this. They are coming from the diagonals, but here from the midpoints. So if I'm going to click on this corner rectangle, we can see that from this section, we can just adjust them. If we don't want to add the construction line, we can just untick this radio button, and it will not going to add up those construction line. But if we want to add up now, since it's a continuous tool, we can see that. So if we want to add it from the midpoint, we can just select the midpoint, and it will going to add up from the midpoint. If we want to select it from the corner, we can just add up from the corner. To dimension the rectangle, we don't have to do much more thing. We just have to provide its length value as well as the width value. If we are going to provide these 2 values, it will going to dimensions that rectangle. There are other types of rectangle as well, like the 3-point corner rectangle. So here we have to have 3 points basically. The first 2 points will determine its length value or one side value, and then we can just have the another one, the other values. So we can see that ultimately it is creating 2 rectangles, but the approaches are different. 3-point center rectangle. So here we have the center point, just 2 lines, and accordingly it will going to create the rectangle. And finally we can even create a parallelogram. So a parallelogram is the kind of shape or quadrilateral in which they are the diagonals or the edges are not aligned to a 90 degree. We can select a parallelogram, and accordingly we can just create a parallelogram. Here we can have one more thing, that is the angle we can even provide. We can provide length, we can provide width, and we can provide the angle if we want. So we can provide these many dimensions over here. So angle also we can just vary, but here the angles are constant. So this is all about the rectangle as well as circle. And that's all for this lecture, and I'm going to catch up you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you like. I hope it can be a little helpful and useful.